You are watching the World 24/7 on the NDTV network. I'm Parmeshwar Bawa. Let's begin with the headlines we're tracking at the moment. At least 30 individuals have been detained in Chattogram for their alleged role in the killing of lawyer Saiful Islam and attacking law enforcement during protests over the arrest of Hindu community leader Chinmoy Krishna Das Brahmachari. Clashes erupted after the Hindu leader was denied bail. China is likely to launch military drills in the coming days near Taiwan, using President Lai Ching-te's upcoming trip to the Pacific and scheduled US transit as a pretext, according to assessments by Taiwan and regional security officials. In its first statement since the ceasefire announcement, Hezbollah has proclaimed victory over Israel and says its fighters remain ready to deal with Israeli attacks. Meanwhile, Israeli attacks on the Gaza Strip have escalated, killing several people. US President-elect Donald Trump named retired General Keith Kellogg to serve as his special envoy for Ukraine and Russia. South Korea's capital city was blanketed by the heaviest snowfall on record for Seoul in November, with bad weather snarling traffic, knocking out power and grounding hundreds of flights as authorities brace for more snow in coming days. Well, a big focus: at least 30 individuals have been detained in Chattogram for their alleged role in the killing of lawyer Saiful Islam and attacking law enforcement during protests over the arrest of Hindu community leader Chinmoy Krishna Das Brahmachari in Bangladesh. As we've been covering, violence broke out after Chinmoy Krishna Das Brahmachari was denied bail and sent to jail in a sedition case. This led to clashes between his supporters and security personnel, resulting in the death of Assistant Public Prosecutor Saiful Islam. There has been strong reactions from India as the ruling party's leaders took to the streets of Kolkata to raise their voices against this arrest. Meanwhile, an influential Indian-American organization, the Foundation for India and Indian Diaspora Studies, has urged President Biden in the United States and President-elect Donald Trump to call on the government of Bangladesh to protect the minority Hindu community in the country. My colleague Saurabh Gupta has been tracking the latest developments for us. He joins us with a quick update at the moment. Saurabh, on home ground, while the Trinamool Congress and the BJP may bicker over what's happening in the neighborhood in Bangladesh, both actually agree that the current situation is absolutely unacceptable?
Absolutely, and that's something that both these parties have made it clear in terms of, the comments we heard yesterday from both Abhishek Banerjee and, of course, Shubhendu Adhikari. In fact, there have been protests in Kolkata also, and the situation in Bangladesh is quite grim at this point, given the fact that what we're hearing is that attacks on the minority community continue. And this is a result of, also the fact that radical forces and radical Islamic forces have been, sort of exerting themselves, while the government in Bangladesh, the interim government led by Chief Advisor Mohammad Yunus, says that they are committed to maintaining communal harmony in terms of, and protection of minorities. The fact is, what we've also heard is that, there have been continuing attacks, especially in places like Chattogram, and Chinmoy Krishna Das, who was actually organizing peacefully and also, uniting people to sort of, put up a united front against what was going on. For him, of course, he is also still in jail, and this is a situation that India is also watching very closely, given the fact that, a lot of loss is at stake, because if the situation worsens, then the calls for India to intervene will only grow louder. And at this point, this is something that, of course, is something that the world community is also watching. In fact, the attacks on minorities is something that is really, really a sensitive issue at this point.
Saurabh, as always, thanks so much for joining us with that quick update. Now, in other news, as per reports, China is likely to launch military drills in the coming days near Taiwan, using President Lai Ching-te's upcoming trip to the Pacific and scheduled U.S. transit as a pretext, according to assessments by Taiwan and regional security officials. China has held 2 rounds of war games near Taiwan this year, but these military drills are meant to send a message to the incoming Trump administration. Here are the finer details.
A sharp response from China, upset that President Lai Ching-te will transit in Hawaii and possibly the overseas U.S. territory of Guam during his first official overseas trip as the president of Taiwan. Lai will visit Tuvalu, Palau and the Marshall Islands, 3 of Taiwan's remaining diplomatic allies, in a trip beginning November 30th. China is accusing Lai of seeking independence by relying on outside forces and violating the One China principle. Taiwan can't schedule official visits to places like the US due to pressure from China. But even this, a simple stopover in Hawaii, has prompted China to urge Washington, D.C. not to allow Lai to land on US soil and to stop enabling what they call Taiwan's separatist forces.
任何企图制造一中一台、两个中国等违反一个中国原则的挑衅行径，都必将遭到全体中国人民的反对。我们敦促美方恪守一个中国原则和中美3个联合公报规定，停止向台独势力发出任何错误信号。
A group of US Congress members have sent an official letter to US President Joe Biden and Secretary of State Antony Blinken, requesting they allow Lai's transit and even that they actively meet with him during his transit in Hawaii. There's no comment yet from the White House or from Taiwan, but a meeting seems unlikely and would be seen as highly provocative. Taiwan's and regional security officials are already anticipating that China's likely to carry out some large-scale military exercises around Taiwan to coincide with Lai's overseas trip to the Pacific. Chris Ma, John Su and Reese Ayres in Taipei for Taiwan Plus.
Let's turn our attention now to the other big story we're tracking. A ceasefire between Israel and the Lebanese militant group Hezbollah that began on Wednesday appears to be holding as we speak, as residents in cars heaped with belongings streamed back towards southern Lebanon despite warnings from Israeli and Lebanese troops that they stay away from certain areas. Meanwhile, Israeli attacks on the Gaza Strip have escalated, killing several people. Israel has also informed the International Criminal Court that it will appeal against arrest warrants for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant over their conduct in the Gaza war. Here are the details.
An uneasy calm prevails over Lebanon after more than 2 months of intense bombings and killings. In a big relief to the Lebanese people, who have seen more than 3,500 of their relatives die since last year, Israel and Lebanon-based militant group Hezbollah reached a US-brokered ceasefire agreement to put an end to hostilities for 60 days. Displaced Lebanese families celebrated ahead of the possible announcement of a ceasefire, breathing a collective sigh of relief.
انبسطنا كثير وفرحنا والمدرسة احتفلت فينا. الله يحفظ مدرسة المرجان وطيار المستقبل اللي حضننا بأحسن استقبال وما قصر بواجباتنا أبدا أبدا. نشكرهم من كل قلبنا، مبسوطين لأن نحن راجعين على بلدنا على وطننا بجنوب.
The sentiment did not echo on the Israeli side, as some displaced families said that they are disappointed with the ceasefire deal. While bombardment has driven 1.2 million Lebanese people from their homes, Israel says it has killed more than 2,000 Hezbollah members. On the other hand, Hezbollah's frequent rocket attacks forced some 50,000 Israelis to evacuate in the country's north. At least 75 people have been killed, more than half of them civilians. More than 50 Israeli soldiers have died in the ground offensive in Lebanon. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that Israel will respond strongly to any violation of the ceasefire with Hezbollah.
חיזבאללה יפר את הפסקת האש לא רק אם הוא יירה עלינו, הוא יפר את ההסכם גם כשהוא ינסה להתחמש כדי לירות עלינו בעתיד. על כל הפרה שלו נגיב בעוצמה.
As the sides came to terms to pause fighting, US President Joe Biden termed the ceasefire as good news and warned against violation of the truce deal.
Let me be clear. If Hezbollah or anyone else breaks the deal and poses a direct threat to Israel, then Israel retains the right to self-defense consistent with international law, just like any country when facing a terrorist group pledged to that country's destruction.
Israeli troops began a land invasion of Lebanon almost 2 months ago, after almost a year of rocket attacks from Hezbollah. While the ceasefire deal signals an end to a brutal conflict in West Asia, the region remains on edge as the Israel-Hamas war is far from over, and Tehran's tensions with Israel continue to boil from time to time. With Vishal Vivek, Bureau Report, NDTV World.
By the way, before leaving the White House in January, US President Joe Biden is ensuring that Ukraine government is bolstered with a weapons package, wait for it, to the tune of $725 million, according to Reuters, which has quoted two US officials. The United States is planning to provide a number of weaponries, including anti-tank weapons from its stocks to harm Russia's military, which has been advancing, and landmines, drones, ammunition for high mobility artillery rocket systems, as per this report. And US President-elect Donald Trump named retired General Keith Kellogg as special envoy to Ukraine and Russia, which is a key role in this incoming administration's effort to end the war. The pick was met with cautious optimism from Ukraine and its allies, with one European official actually saying on record, "Thank God, not the worst option." Now, Mr. Kellogg is an 80-year-old retired Army Lieutenant General who has long been Trump's top advisor on defense issues, and he has previously advocated for arming Ukraine only if Kyiv enters peace talks with Russia, and for pushing the Kremlin to the table by threatening to ramp up support for Kyiv. Even so, Russian President Vladimir Putin is unlikely to agree to negotiations as long as his troops are making progress on the battlefield, as per many geopolitical watchers. And several of US President-elect Donald Trump's cabinet and administration picks were targeted this week, with actions including bomb threats, according to reports. Well, the threats were made on Tuesday night and Wednesday morning, and law enforcement acted quickly to ensure the safety of those targeted in the US. Elise Stefanik, a Republican US representative, and Trump's choice to be US ambassador to the United Nations, and Lee Zeldin, a former Republican congressman who is Trump's pick to head the Environmental Protection Agency, both said in separate statements that they had been the targets of bomb threats. News and updates continue in a moment right here on NDTV. We're slipping into a very quick break for now. Welcome back. Let's get you a quick update from South Korea now. Seoul has recorded its heaviest November snowfall since records began. That's over a century ago in 1907. The South Korean capital was covered with at least 16 centimeters of snow, beating the city's previous record of 12.4 centimeters. That's from November 1972. This has caused significant disruption across the country, with local media reporting that flights had been grounded, roads closed, and that there were delays to transport services as well. In other news, a woman who joined Namibia's underground independence movement in the 1970s is a strong contender to become its first female leader as the country voted in a presidential election. Here are the details.
Amid a wave of historic election upsets in southern Africa, voters in Namibia head to the polls to choose a new president and parliament in what is shaping up to be the most fiercely contested election in decades. The presidential race presents a tough challenge for the ruling SWAPO party and could potentially usher in the country's first ever female president. Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah, who joined Namibia's independence movement in the 1970s, emerges as a strong contender. Currently the vice president, she is the SWAPO party's presidential candidate and is in the lead after the results of special early voting. However, the ruling SWAPO party, which has held the presidency for 34 years since Namibia's independence, faces rising frustration from voters, particularly over high unemployment and economic struggles, issues that are hitting the country's youth the hardest.
I'm proud to have a mentality of liberation, because having liberated the people of Namibia politically, I'm now ready to liberate them economically.
Nandi-Ndaitwah, who received part of her education in the former Soviet Union while in exile during the fight for independence, has vowed to create more jobs and address the unemployment rate. She has pledged to spend approximately 85 billion Namibian dollars over the next 5 years to create more than 500,000 jobs, a goal that her critics have called unrealistic. While Nandi-Ndaitwah represents the rare chance for a female leader in Africa, SWAPO's popularity continues to slip. 14 other candidates are also running for president, including SWAPO's closest challenger 4 years ago, Panduleni Itula. A runoff will be held if a candidate doesn't win more than 50% of the votes, which has never happened before in the country. As Namibia heads to polls, the election holds potential to reshape the nation's future and possibly mark a new chapter in its political history. Whatever the result, this election is poised to be a turning point for the country. Samia Afsar, NDTV World.
In other news, two of London's most famous markets, one selling fish, the other meat, the Billingsgate Fish Market and the Smithfield Meat Market, are set to close in the coming years, bringing an end to traditions stretching back to medieval times. Thank you for investing your time and watching this edition of The World 24/7. As always, we'll keep tracking the latest updates for you. Do stay tuned.